Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode 111 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today the co-founder of Rare Breed Academy, John Pruna. Great conversation. We talk life, family, business. Sit back, everyone, and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on John Pruna. We had this literally about a 15-20 minute conversation before the podcast started. We probably could have been recording this whole time. Great individual. I'm excited about this conversation. I'm excited about just to even pass this conversations to keep this connection going with John. An incredible dad, incredible entrepreneur. And he has, if you follow his Instagram, which I'm going to link everything at the end of the show, incredibly hard workouts he does, which is pretty inspiring because I love watching. And anybody who knows what my show is, I usually don't reach out to guests. I usually get guests to request to be on the show. And for some reason, something just like, I don't even know what it was. Something that I just kept watching his videos and watching what he was doing. And as a dad, and I was just like, I got to get this guy on my show. So I reached out to John. So I'm excited about today. How are you, brother?
Man, I'm good, man. Very humbled and grateful to be on here with you, Jeff.
It's going to be a great conversation. So usually when I always start off by allowing the guests to know what you're currently doing. You're a co-founder of Rare Breed Academy, but I'm going to change it up today. I want to get the audience to know where you grew up, siblings, how was your childhood? Let's start with there, and let's make this a cool story today. So where'd you grow up and how many siblings and how was your childhood?
Man, loaded question, brother. I'm born and raised, Dallas. Both of my parents are from the Philippines, so Filipino-American, and I'm the only child. No siblings. And what's crazy, man, I shouldn't even be here because my mom was, if you know any Filipinos, a lot of them are devout Catholic.
Yeah.
And my mom was going to be a nun. She was already on the way to the convent, brother. Like it was a wrap. And she happened to go on a blind date with my father. And my father, I guess, had that swag, said, look, you need to make a U-turn and let's try this thing out. So I was raised in a very, very devout Catholic household.
Yeah.
Faith has always been a big, big part of my life. And, when you're dealing with an immigrant family, you're kind of embedded with that grind.
Yeah.
That hardworking element, because both of my parents came up very poor, sleeping on benches, things of that nature. So, you just had to be grateful for what you had on your plate. And my father and my mother definitely instilled that into me, as well as, of course, just to be grateful, just being in gratitude for every opportunity that you have in life. So mom was a nurse, just like every other Filipino who came to the States. So I was literally raised by a bunch of nurses. Like my mom and all of her friends were nurses, came to the States. So all my aunts are nurses, that whole inside joke. And all of the men who come to from the Philippines are postmen. And my dad is a postman. So I was raised by my mom and my dad, who were, of course, in very stable jobs. So when I got into the entrepreneurial world, they were very much against it. They didn't like the risk that I wanted to take in terms of being a coach, in terms of launching a company. But obviously, as I evolved, they supported my dreams. And, I can't thank enough to have a mother and father like I do.
Yeah. It's so crazy is I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, John, is the same thing. My parents, immigrants to Toronto, Canada from Portugal, and blue collar workers. My dad works at a Ford factory. My mom, she had several jobs. Sometimes she would have 2-3 jobs at a time. And even though we hadn't had a lot as a kid, we never felt we didn't have enough because we were filled with so much love, so much attention that no matter what, you felt you're always fulfilled. You never felt you're missing anything. So I think that's really, really inspiring part of it. We in Toronto, Canada have a huge Filipino community, massive. Like a couple of in the martial art industry, a lot of the gym owners around here, especially the Muay Thai, are all Filipino guys, and they're all buddies of ours, right? They're all, and one thing I've learned over the years is you guys love basketball.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Basketball is a huge part of I guess even you guys have your own pro league and all that stuff. It's massive there in the Philippines. Huh?
Oh, yeah. And like if you're over 5'10", you're like a giant for like a Filipino. Like I'm like probably like the Rock, compared to most Filipinos, right? So, but my dad, is like 5'7", and loved Larry Bird. And that's all he would talk to me about is Larry Bird and Muhammad Ali, because Filipinos love basketball, boxing, and dancing.
Yeah.
If you ever know, you go to a Filipino party, they're doing karaoke and line dancing. And they probably got an NBA game on in the background. Like that is. And of course, you got all the egg rolls, all the lumpia, all the pancit you can eat. So
what was your first taste of being an entrepreneur?
Man, it's crazy. I have a very, very interesting story. I want to kind of circle back,
100%.
Before I jumped in. Number one, you always talk about mindset. I'm a big believer that everything comes down to your self-identity. So I never believed that I was an entrepreneur. I never believed that I was a CEO type of individual. So believe it or not, I started working at a homeless shelter. When I first left college, went to A&M, graduated with a psych degree, thought I was honestly going to be a psychologist. That was kind of my plan. So I started working at a homeless shelter, and at this homeless shelter, you're basically working with kids who don't have foster families, and they're waiting for a foster family in between the CPS, finding the right family for them. And I was working with kids who had very disturbing backgrounds and just hard lives. Like I was working with kids who had been honestly raped, like 80% of them had been raped. I was in with like 12 to 13-year-old heroin addicts.
Wow.
I was dealing with gangbangers who were 14 years old. I mean, kids who had.
And how old are you at this time?
I'm 22.
So you're still a child too, trying to intake this all, which is really not. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I was 22, and, it taught me a lot of humility. I mean, I was dealing with kids who, would come out of the closet to their families and then be left out on the street, so physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, all of it. And my job was to teach them life skills, so I would go in there and honestly just to teach them how to be adults. And I was still a kid, I wasn't even really qualified, to really teach them how to be an adult.
Yeah.
But I learned quite a bit about humility, about how to be grateful, and crisis intervention, how to kind of stable my emotions and, handle kids who are in very, very stressful situations. I would get a chance to sit in on, some of the counseling sessions, things like that. So, fast forward, I was getting into fitness then, and I started, just training the kids with fitness and stuff like that, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Slowly got into sales, all those different things. And I'm kind of jumping years, like years of my life. I got a job at a nursing home. And at the nursing home, I was a wellness specialist. So long story short, I was like an extension of physical therapy, as well as even activities. So when your 85 or 90-year-old grandmother or grandfather broke their hip and was trying to walk again, I would be the guy to maintain their strength after they left physical therapy. So what's funny about it is, since I loved boxing and I loved fitness, a lot of people who go into a nursing home, they get treated like babies. It's like the twilight of their life. They don't have anybody anymore, and they want to be treated like the adults and, just the kings and queens that they are. You're dealing with people who were in World War II.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I started getting a lot of knowledge from these old people and just talking to them. And I started teaching boxing, to these residents.
That's awesome.
And it was crazy. So imagine this, bro, like this is crazy. There'd be like 10 people in physical therapy, and they asked me to create a wellness program. There's like 110 people, 110 residents in a nursing home. I would literally have 90, like 85 to 95-year-old people. If you weren't bedbound, they would be wrapped around in a circle in their wheelchair doing shadow boxing drills with one arm dumbbells.
That's fine. That's good. Go. Keep talking. There, I want to give you applause. You hear that?
I'll take it.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
I'll take it. Man. So, fast forward, my wellness program got super popular. The paper wrote about it, and they started using me as a way to get other residents to come in. They're like, man, this guy has a wellness program. You do this, you do that. And they're like, man, you need to be in sales, because I started to close a lot of people, families who would want to make sure that their mother and their father and their grandmother were getting the right care. So I got into sales, worked my way up the ladder. And then after that, then I was able to work my way up into management. And I skipped a lot of the journey, but I had an opportunity to be a CEO of a rehab hospital. And it was I was at that place in my life where, okay, I could either be the CEO of a hospital or I could go out and do my own thing.
Yeah.
And then I fast forwarded and I said to myself that, man, I don't see myself being the CEO of a hospital for the next 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to meet another friend of mine who had some companies that were already doing well, and was like, come with me and let's run these companies together. And that was kind of the beginning of me jumping into entrepreneurship.
What age were you at this time? At this point?
When I took that jump, probably like 29.
29, yeah.
29 is when I really did it. 29, 30 years old, give or take.
So you're roughly around 10, 11 years of being an entrepreneur fully.
Yeah. And then, I've always been a performance coach. I've always did the fitness and the training, coached at several gyms and was able to win some awards and get some recognitions and things like that, but never took it serious enough to where, hey, I'm a performance coach. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And then finally, when I jumped into entrepreneurship, really learned the business side of things, how to lead, how to manage people, cash flow, obviously sales and marketing, everything that you need to know, but still maintain being a coach. The fitness side, the mindset side, the habit coaching has always been ingrained in me. The way you live your life, waking up at 4:30, I live my life the same way. Everything comes down to self-discipline, purpose, consistency.
I call it sacrifice.
No doubt.
Yeah. I mean, you always hear these entrepreneurs, John, that are like, I get up to 4:30 because I love it. And I love, man, I half the week I'm getting up at 4:30. I rub my eyes like, what am I doing? But I realize if I sacrifice myself of being up at 4:30, it allows me to be home from 3 to 7 with my family and turn off my phone and be present. So it's that sacrifices. You figure out what parts of your life are the non-negotiables, you put them in there, and then you figure out what you have to sacrifice to make that shit happen. And I think once you can understand that truly and really understand that time is a currency, shit starts making sense, right? Everything starts making sense.
Man, time is a currency. Like that is a gem if I ever heard one. Like to me, I'll tell you the truth. Like me, I wake up between 3:30 and 4, just like you, like in that pocket. I'm one of those people where I feel like the first 3 hours of your day is dedicated to creating the person and the life that you want. Because the minute we're both dads, right? The minute your kids wake up and you kind of open yourself to the chaos of the world with emails and text messages and all that, you can no longer really invest in growth and mastery,
Yeah.
So if you don't have that solitude for 2 to 3 hours before the world wakes up, you're already behind the 8 ball.
100%. Give me a morning routine for you.
Oh man. So my morning routine, I wake up honestly, about 4 a.m. and then I start with prayer for about, a good 5 minutes. And then after that, I immediately start studying and researching. Like, I love fitness. I love business. I love personal development. So I'll just read for honestly like 45 minutes. And during that 45 minutes, if I'm listening to something or watching something, I'm stretching.
Yeah.
I do a mobility routine, big time.
Yeah.
And then I train. So my rule is if I'm going to train for an hour, I have to study for at least an hour and a half. Like it's like a 2-to-1 ratio or a 1.5-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a rule for me. So, and then after that, that's pretty much 3 hours. I come back, I make breakfast for my family. And then it's off to the races, with whatever the main things that I need to do.
Do you fast?
Do I fast?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just asked that because you seem the type of person. Yeah.
For like 6 years, I intermittent fasted, and I would do long fasts. Like I would do 48-hour fast at the end of the month.
Yeah.
So like for me, it's like a spiritual thing. So for 48 hours, I wouldn't eat. And like every hour, I kind of dedicate myself to praying and wishing for other people's happiness who are struggling. It kind of helps reset my mind, going into the month to be grateful, and it gives me time to reflect on what I've done for the month. Like, did I really do and achieve and execute on the things that I said I was going to do for the month? Yeah. So I haven't done that in a while. I got away from fasting just because, like, I like to play with my diet.
Yeah.
I'm always experimenting with because I'll say this, because I know we're not getting a fitness conversation necessarily, but a lot of people don't eat, train, and work in alignment with the body they want to build or the life they want to create. So I always look for the diet that I know really elevates my level of energy and focus. So when you've done fasting for so long, I would ask myself, like, man, I'm starting to hit a wall at these certain times of the day. Is fasting really the right way for me to approach my diet? Do I actually train better, and am I actually more dialed in when I eat right after I train, as opposed to just taking aminos, to preserve that muscle? So I've kind of played with it lately, but I haven't fasted like in a month. But man, I did that for probably 6 to 8 years.
Yeah. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, but what I do is I do it Monday to Friday. I do roughly 16 to 17 hour fasting. And then Saturday and Sunday, I break my fast just to keep the metabolism off track, not to always keep it steadily. And then I enjoy having breakfast with the family on the Saturday and the Sunday morning. So what I do is I do the Monday to Friday. I usually finish my last meal about 8:30, and then I'm good to around 12:30. Like, I just ate something quickly before we jumped on the podcast, because I knew I'm going to be here for a bit. But it's that I try to keep that window of the 16, 17 hour window. And I mean, my energy levels are fine. I mean, it's a situation, like I said, because I don't go straight. Saturday and Sundays, I break the fast, and then I reset it. I break it and reset it, and it works for me for now. But I'm the same team as you. I'm always changing stuff. I'm always playing around with different stuff, trying different stuff, right? Because you go through different stages in your life, right? and different routines. Like for like a month and a half, I was running. My body's not meant to be running, but I was doing it with my son for his marathon. So I was training with him for a month and a half. So I took a lot off the weights and I was more focused on just building up the cardio run. So you're always changing up how you focus on what you're trying to do, trying to accomplish at that time. So I appreciate that. Give me I want to, even for my own purpose, I want to understand a bit more what you said with alignment of what type of body you want, from your diet to your rest, all that. Give me an understanding more about that.
Well, I mean, you can go in a lot of ways. Like I was training a pro football player, who obviously wanted to get back to his playing weight and look the way he did as an athlete, when he played pro football. So long story short, depending on why you run, I'm a big believer in running, right? It's almost more of a mental exercise than just cardio exercise.
No question.
But he was running 7 to 8 miles, a day. And, he didn't obviously look or feel like he wanted to. I was like, well, when you were performing at the highest level as a world-class athlete, were they making you run 7 to 8 miles a day? Or were they making you do wide receiver drills and sprints and power cleans? Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I was doing a bunch of sprints. I was like, well, then why aren't you doing them now? You're not training according to the physique and the body that you want to build. If you want to be stronger, better, faster, more fluid, running 7 to 8 miles a day, that's not necessarily going to get you there.
Yeah.
So you need to really reevaluate your programming. So I got him, obviously, there's a term called fartleks, which means speed play.
Yeah.
Which is basically randomized sprinting, doing hill sprints again, going outside and finding a landmark and sprinting hard for about a good 10 seconds and then walking until your heart rate, calms down, and then repeating that pattern.
Yeah.
So, and again, diet is number one. Like a lot of people, I tell them, do you want to lose weight or do you want to lose body fat? Because if you want to lose weight, cut your calories. Don't worry about your macros.
Yeah.
Stop eating this trash and you're going to lose weight. If you want to lose body fat, then you need to marginally cut your calories, be intentional about it, maintain your protein intake so you don't lose any muscle, because there's such a thing as normal weight obesity. Nobody wants to be skinny fat.
Yeah.
Like there's people out there, man, they might weigh $150, but they got this gut on them, like, so what physique and aesthetic are you really going for, and make sure your diet and your training aligns with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How do I even word this to you? Fatherhood. What does it mean to you?
Oh my goodness, man. I mean, fatherhood is legacy. That's what it is. It's everything, at the end of the day, legacy is not leaving something for someone. It's leaving something in someone.
I love that.
And that's what you can do as a father, right? Like what you're doing with your son right now, you're building a legacy. You're building the Lopes legacy. And what you ingrain in your son is going to be passed down to all the things that he creates and lives on after he perishes. Like what you've done with Kimura, all that's going to live far past, when it's your time and your clock stops. And that's what you're doing with your son. That's what fatherhood is to me.
Love that. How long have you been married now for?
Going on 7 years.
Where'd you meet your
about to be 7 years.
About to be 7 years. Where'd you meet your wife?
Man, this is a funny story. I met her at the boxing gym.
Okay.
So this is you're gonna die laughing. This is how open I'm gonna be with you, right? So I can be one of those very intense coaches. So we were at this boxing gym and she came, she's hitting the bag or whatever. So at the end, I'm all about training people who are strangers in the beginning, but obviously I make them like family. That's kind of the way I coach, right? That team-oriented approach.
Yeah.
So at the end, we kind of do obviously these big challenges. So I made everybody do this plank, right? And of course, nobody can go down And if somebody drops to their knees, everybody gets a penalty, right? So my soon to be wife at that time, she's doing the plank, and I would randomly kick people in the stomach, to make them engage their core and not obviously sag their hips, or their back. So I'm kicking her, and I kicked her in the boob. And I didn't even know it, right? I'm like super intense. I'm sitting there, just kicking random people, and I kick her. So after the class, she comes up to me. She was like, you kicked me in my boob, right? Like, I was trying to hide how much that hurt, but that you missed. And I just started laughing. I was like, man, my bad. I'm so sorry. And that sparked us talking. She asked me to be her trainer, and I never became her trainer. That's something I'm trying to learn. I've never gotten a chance to coach my wife, because you already know you can, like you're a genius entrepreneur, bro. And I don't know if your wife would ask you for entrepreneurial advice, but the whole husband and wife dynamic, she goes to another person for training advice, even though she's got somebody who's done it for a long time at home.
Is she involved in your businesses or she has her own career? How does that work?
She does.
And I'll explain to them why I'm asking.
So believe it or not, I opened a wellness clinic that I sold. The wellness clinic, long story short, I wanted to create a very holistic program that combined the fitness world with the medical world, because I've been in healthcare.
Yeah.
So long story short, I had a chiropractor, a medical physician, personal trainer, a nurse, all working together for a patient's program. My wife was the nurse. And of course, me being one of the owners of the facility, we worked together building that business. We sold it a little over a year ago, and now she's doing her own thing. She's still an active nurse. She works with the same physician who co-owned that wellness facility with me back then. And so she's doing her own thing. She works sparingly, though, just part-time.
You have still the young ones at home as well, right?
That's right.
How was that working with your wife?
Man, it was definitely a dynamic we had to adjust to very much. She was very busy and I was very busy. So there was a lot of communication. We did have to work together, but it's not like we had the dynamic where husband and wives are truly business partners, where they're constantly making decisions together. Yeah. I think that would have been very, very different. Because when I was in the business meetings with the partners, she wouldn't be part of those meetings. She was there to be a nurse, care for the patients. And I was playing more of a position of the entrepreneur founder. Yeah. And of course, I was still a trainer and a coach there too. Yeah. So it went well. It went well.
What I'm asking is, I'm going on to, I think I told you, I'm going on to 18 years being married now. And wow. My wife is the pure opposite of me. Like, she's very independent, but she needs her 9-to-5 job. She would never, ever work for me. She would never work in a business with me. She always says that. She goes, even from day one, she goes, if we ever work together in a business, or if I ever get into your business, it's probably our quickest way to divorce. So she's always been independent. We've been married for 18 years and we have an incredible relationship, and we still don't have one bank account together.
Wow.
She has her independent money. I have mine. We come together. What bills have to be come together. I pay certain things. She pays certain things. Everybody's happy. We never argue about money. I'm the hustle, go. She's the grounder. I come home, she grounds me.
Wow.
And she's such a simple person, where one thing my wife always says, Lucy always says, is like, it's this funniest thing she always says. She goes, if today didn't change, it was a good day. That's how her mindset with life is. It's all about just family time, building memories with the kids, everything will come together kind of thing. So she's very grounded, and then I'm the type just to go. And then when and she's always been the type where she never questions nothing I do. I mean, we've been together. It's crazy. We're looking at pictures the other day. She was friends with my sister growing up. So she was on my 16th birthday party. Think about that, buddy. And so she was in the background of my 16th birthday party. We took a picture the other day. We're like, oh my God. And she's like, yeah, I remember I was there. And I'm like, I couldn't even remember her being at my 16th birthday party.
Connect? Like, when did y'all start dating? Like, how old?
Really around 1920, we started.
Wow.
So we've been together for, a while, man. Yeah. She's a couple of years older than me too. Right. So she was always with my sister. So I always knew her of her. And then it's just, and then through our early 20s, it was like we were together, but we were very independent too. It wasn't one of those, like, I'm watching everything you're doing. Like, you do your life, I do my life. Let's enjoy our lives. And then we slowly started getting closer and closer. Then we ended up obviously getting married and having kids. And we did, it was funny because everything we did, we processed. It was when we got married, I was 27, she was 29. And we said, okay, listen, we're going to live together for a year. European families, like, she couldn't leave her house till she got married. I stayed at my parents. So it was, and she comes from a very religious family too. And so we said, okay, we're going to live together for a year, make sure we can live together before we have kids or anything. So we lived together we got married, lived together for a year. Everything's good. She goes, and then we're like, okay, we got to make sure we could be able to take care of something. So we purchased a dog. We had a dog for a year. We took care of a dog, and then we started having kids. It was like a process, and we had this all planned out, which is crazy. But we had this all planned out, and it's in 18 years. And we have a very we give each other enough space, but we give each other enough time. Like, when I come home, when the kids go down, and my kids are older, so it's a little different. So now 12 and 14. When the kids start going down around 9:30. We every night we'll get together and we go for a power walk, usually about a mile walk. And it is just our time just to talk and connect every night.
That's special. I mean, to me, I love it. I feel like the key word I took from that is like independence. You know, you allowing your wife to really be her, her allowing you to really be you.
Yeah.
I think that's so important for a healthy marriage, to where you both have your lives as much as you have the life you have together as one unit.
Yeah.
Because that's where things get lost, because a lot of people, and I'm saying this with a ton of humility, you know, some spouses get lost in their other spouse's world. Like, they lose their identity because Jeff's the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
They start becoming friends with just Jeff's friends.
Yeah.
You know, or vice versa. And they end up kind of losing their own identity and their independence in the process. So I think that's super special. I mean, hey, you've been married for 18 years, and, you know, that's 11 more years than me. So you definitely know more in that scenario for sure.
You just have to. I think the biggest thing with relationships, and it is crazy when you look at the actual percents when it comes to entrepreneurs. And I don't know how it is in the US, but in Canada, 33% entrepreneurs have a higher chance of divorce. That's the rate, which is crazy. 33, that's a big number.
That's a chunk.
And it's because I think you're so involved. These guys get so involved with their careers, their business, that's their baby. And they forget when they were dating, they were giving their wives flowers. They were trying to keep that relationship because they're still trying to sell themselves when they're dating.
Yeah, that's right.
And then once you get married, you start slowing the process down. Once you have kids, your kids become your purpose, and then everything becomes numb. And it's also too is a lot of people stay together way too long. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, I'm also a strong believer in if a relationship is not meant to be, don't be together, sacrifice it because of the kids either. Because if anything, you're causing more friction for your kids and more problems. So is that understanding too is some people stay in a relationship too long. And they get that comfort, and they don't know how to break out of that comfort zone, right? Or they don't know how to change that comfort zone, because it just becomes 9 to 5. You work, you come home, you have dinner, you go to bed. It's a routine, and they don't know change, and they're so scared to change, right? So being able to have that mindset where you still have to try, I think that's the simplest way to look at it. You still have to try to make that relationship work. The minute you stop trying, it starts falling apart.
Yeah.
So me and my wife, like, we're always still trying. We're always trying to do stuff. We still go on our date nights. We try to do stuff away from the kids, so we have that understanding, right? And it was hard because obviously my son needed a lot of attention the first few years of his life, where that time numbed us out quite a bit. So it was like we had to kind of rebuild that all again, and it's been about last 5-6 years have been really, really special because we've been able to rebuild it again, which is, I mean, we could have gave up, but we worked on and kind of rebuilt it to that level, right? Because you have to realize, I'll give you an example. When we're in the hospital for those 4 months, John, we would get up at from 4:35, bring my daughter to daycare, drive down to Toronto to the hospital. We'd be at the hospital before 7:00. He had 6 departments following him because he had a department for each organ. So they would have something called a round table every morning. So it was one doctor for each department would sit around this table, and it would kind of pre-plan the day. I'm an entrepreneur. I got so heavily involved with it. They wouldn't start the meeting without me there every morning. So I would be sitting with the doctors, and I would have studied everything the night before they talked about, and we planned out the day. And they would, even doing a blood work, even anything, they had to have my approval. They would call me like 3 a.m. Mr. Lopes, are we allowed to do a blood work with him? Yeah, okay, let's go, and tell me what time. And I would be charting everything they're doing on my side, right? So I wanted to learn everything about him. So we would literally get to the hospital. We would sit by my son's bed, and I would be doing the appointments. My wife was there, and we would sit by my son's bed from 7 till like 6, 7 at night, drive home, pick up my daughter, get home, have dinner, and then I would take off. I would literally grab my dog, and that was my therapy. Is I would grab my dog, and he's not with us anymore, Mile, my older dog, and I would go for an hour, 12-hour walk with my dog, and that my dog was my therapy. I would sit on a rock and just talk to my dog for like an hour or two. That was my way of getting through shit. And because me and my wife were together all day, even though we didn't talk, we got home, we didn't talk. And then, because then we were just trying to keep my daughter at a higher level. So we would be focused on my daughter. And then I would study for 2-3 hours, everything the doctors talked about that day, go to bed, boom, the next day. And we did that. It was 7 days a week. It was Monday to Sunday for 4 months. So and we turned off our phones, we turned off our answering service. We didn't see family, we didn't see friends. We kind of shut off the world and said, listen, Tiago's our purpose. We got to get him to the hospital. This is all we're going to concentrate on. And that was my set. It was me. It was like this, in a way, I almost put him as if he was a project, and I had to do what I had to do to get him out of the hospital. So it was just one of those mindsets. So for those 4 months, we really didn't communicate much, even though we were together all day. And then we finally got home. It was all about my obsession with getting my kid to the next level. And it's like, he became my obsession. Yeah. Crazy. I know this is your podcast. I'm going to tell you a little quick story, 2 seconds. I apologize for talking.
Please.
This is how you, as a parent, and I want you to learn something too, is we as parents directly try to mentor our children, but with the lessons, sometimes we indirectly teach them are so powerful and could affect them so much too. Like my daughter, she's been doing dance since she was like 2 or 3 years old. And I was a dad, like when she was doing ballet at 4 years old, I was only dad sitting on the bench for like 2 hours. It's like, I was always there with her for the dance. But long story is, then my son was born and all that stuff, we put a lot of attention towards my son. And it was crazy, is this is how much focus we had on my son, where my daughter 3 years ago, she's 14 now. So she was 11 years old. She came to me and she goes, Dad, can I have a conversation with you? This little 11-year-old, she's so smart. And she's like, I'm like, yeah, what's up? See, her name's Sierra. I go, what's up, C? And she's like, I know, she goes, I love dance, and I've been doing dance just for fun, never competitive, just for fun all these years. She goes, I've always wanted to do competitive dance, but I realized all these years how much time you dedicated to Tiago and how much time he needed. I never wanted to stop that because I knew he needed it. And I never asked you to be on a competitive team. So my 11-year-old was sacrificing her wands. How crazy is that? Wow. For her brother. And then I was just taken back when she said that. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, what do you want to do? And she goes, competitive dance is like 4 or 5 days a week. And I know you're still doing a lot of stuff with Tiago. She goes, could I go on the part-time team and prove to you? And I'm like, okay. And she goes, I was just listening to her. She's like, the part-time competitive team, if I make the team, she goes, there's only 2 competitions all year and 1 recital. And she goes, if I show you I can do really good on the competitions and I'm dedicated, the next year you allow me to try out for the full-time team. I'm like, cool. So she tries out. Of course, if you see go to my videos too, my daughter she does like 15 full chin-ups. Like the kid's shredded.
Wow.
Oh, she's a beast. She's a complete beast. You see a picture. I'll show you a picture. She's shredded. She just works out every day. I get home and she's running the treadmill for like an hour. She's insane, 14-year-old. So long story is, she does her 2 competitions, destroys them, wins platinum in both. So I have nothing to say. So I go the next year, she goes, Dad, and I never realized how good she was. So the next year, she's like, Dad, could I try out for the full-time team? And yeah, I promised it. She goes out, tries a full-time team. She makes the full-time team. She comes out to me a couple of days later. She's like, Dad, she goes, there's a high performance team in all Toronto. She goes, this will be like 400 or 500 girls. These girls have been dancing their whole lives at this level. She goes, I just want the experience. It's $40 to try out. I'm not going to make it. I just want the experience. I'm like, that's cool. Give her $40. Went, sat in the car for 3 hours. She did his tryouts. She comes back. We don't hear from nothing. We're not expecting to hear nothing. A week and a half later, I get a phone call. My daughter makes the team. crazy. So I didn't even want to tell her. I didn't even know what to tell her. So she does dance now 7 days a week now at 40. So I ended up taking her to Starbucks, and I made the girl in the cup. You made the SIP team. So she was actually just, we're on the patio, just me and her, and we're having a little conversation. One thing and this is even for you, is I separate my kids. What I mean by that is when I separate their attention. So I'll take one and do something with one, and then I'll take the other and I'll do something. So they have individual attention at all times.
Man, I think that's amazing. And well, number one, the emotional maturity of your daughter to be able at 13, 14, say, I know that Tiago needs more focus right now.
Yeah. 11. She was doing it at 11. And then you listen to this, how crazy this is. So
that is crazy.
She made the SIP team. And then this past year, which is she was going from grade 8 to high school. She was 13, turning 14 this past year. Because of COVID, she was homeschooled. And so she didn't have a graduation, which sucked. From grade 8 to grade 9, it's a big graduation, right? So we had a graduation. It was a virtual graduation. So we had all their family over. It was on the big screen. It was doing live. And her principal was like, oh, at the end, we're doing, okay, award ceremony. This is how we don't even pay attention in a good way, but it's because we trust her so much. So all of a sudden they start giving awards. She was on the honor roll. And then they started giving all the awards. And then the last award of the night, the principal goes, this is probably the most special award of the night. And she goes, this to a young lady that's leaving us now, going to high school. And she goes, we've watched her for all these years and what she's done. And I think this is the perfect time to give her this award. I want to get emotional here. She goes, she won Sibling of the Year for always taking care of her brother.
Wow.
How crazy is that, buddy?
That is, man, if there's ever something you should be proud of, it's that
crazy.
Right there.
Crazy, huh?
It's that right there. I mean, like we always talk about, identities and titles and things like that. And like the two biggest titles you have in your life really are husband and father. Yeah. And kind of going back to what you were saying, oftentimes when you have a kid, you invest so much in being a father that you forget how to be a husband. You focus so much on being there for your child, and your wife does the same thing, wife and mother. She's so busy being a mother, you guys forget to really focus on the marriage and being husband and wife. And I would be lying to you if I didn't say that didn't happen to us, when we had our first child, because we had our first child and opened the wellness clinic at the same time.
Yeah.
So here I am having my first child and having my first, wellness clinic, which was a big venture for me, and my partners, and my wife was part of that. So all of our energy and attention was about adjusting, being new parents, and building a business, building a startup. And what the grind is for that,
crazy.
That you forget the date nights, you forget the conversations where the phone is off and the TV's off and you can just focus on each other's eyes. Like those are things that I know that I've learned the hard way.
Yeah.
And continue to adjust.
You're always adjusting. Even as a parent, you're constantly learning, you're constantly adapting, you're constantly seeing things from other people that you could incorporate into your life. I think the easiest thing to always remember, John, is questions. Ask the questions.
Yes.
The simplest thing, whether you're doing anything in life, whether you're the client, whether you're talking to your kids, the minute you stop asking questions, you're not searching for the answers anymore. And that's when shit starts passing by. You don't realize it. So always ask questions.
I'll tell you the question, man. I have to say this because I coach a handful of people personally, just the same way you do, you know, and the way I coach is I train them for 40 minutes. And then the last 20 minutes, I give them every bit of wisdom or tactics I can to help them in business, life, etc. And you were talking about questions, right? And the question I always ask myself and I always pose to everybody is, would you follow you? At the end of the day, if your back was against the wall and the decisions and the way you acted would influence the people that you love most, would you follow who you are right now? If you are lost and you didn't know where to go, right? And you needed some guidance, you needed somebody who could be like a North Star, would you follow you? And I'll say this. I was with my business partners. I ask this question all the time since I know this is an entrepreneurial podcast. You know, as entrepreneurs and high performing people, you're so ambitious and you want to take on the world and you got all these ideas that you want to bring to fruition, right? So as you're building a startup, you see these gaps in your company. I would always ask my partners, you know, if you were a consultant and you walked into our company and your job was to fix it, what would you change? What would you change about, like, would you change the leadership? Would you change the operations? Would you change the way we're developing our employees? What would you change? And it would give them the clarity to detach from their emotional attachment to being an owner, you know, and making those decisions. And it goes back to, like you said, it's the questions you ask. Would you follow you if you were a consultant? How would you break down your business? What are the gaps that you can see? And it's that art of objectivity that I think changes somebody.
That's very, have you ever studied NLP? So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and it's very, what you said there, NLP, like I'm certified as NLP. I was only about, out of the whole certification, there's probably about 3 little things I took out of it. One is something I've used my whole life. Like when I was 19, 20, I was doing sales for gyms. I would have like 200-300 people in a room, and I would teach them how to do a walkthrough, how to sell personal training, how to bring somebody, put them into the gym and kill them. If you get a fit guy, put them in a busy gym and make them do drop sets of push-ups and press and just destroy them. Yeah. I was doing that. I was running a consulting company called Million Bodies. And so one thing I've taken from NLP when I got certified last year, and I took like a 9-month program, was commonality, rapport. You're trying to, this sales 101, you're trying to build your commonality, trying to build your rapport with somebody. But another part, what you just said, is separating yourself from that, visualizing yourself away from that, and actually taking and having that clarity of putting yourself on the outside, looking in, like, is this what you want to do? One thing I always ask people, have you ever heard, or have you ever wrote like a living eulogy on yourself?
Man, no, I haven't, but I was listening to one of your podcasts and you mentioned it, and it inspired me to do it. So that is definitely something that I'm going to do. Sure.
Once you actually physically just write it down, it changes how you look, how you treat others, and how you react to others.
I believe it.
Because it just changes it, right? It's something so simple, but I think it's so powerful. And I think it's cool is to do it with a couple really close friends, other guys, so you could actually talk to each other about it. It sounds weird, but it's if you're doing it to yourself, it's like, okay, I get it. But if you're putting yourself out there and other people are hearing what you're truly open to, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Because you're holding yourself accountable.
Yeah. It's all about accountability. Yeah. And the quote that I always try to say and live by is, you got to step outside of yourself to create yourself.
100%.
You know? And it goes back to what you're saying, right? Like being able to take yourself out of the situation, a bird's eye view of your life, of your relationship, of you as an athlete, artist, entrepreneur. And can you really see it from a stance where you can just judge it in order to improve it, right? The right way. Yeah. So I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna do the eulogy exercise. Very cool. I might put it part of the program for the company, man. I might have to call
I didn't invent it, man. It's a good way of looking at things, right? Yeah. And even just like certain things that I try to push with people is like, I think we live in a society where we're always wound, we always react. We're always in reaction mode to everything. And little things like that is like, I even tell a lot of guys, even like, and it's something you might do already, but as a young dad, is as your kids get older, now your kids are very young, but as your kids get older, is coming inside your home with a good vibration all the time. Because you don't realize it. And I did this for years. You come in the house and you've had a shit day, or you've had a shit day at the office, and you walk in your house, even though you don't argue with them, but you just put your bag down, your kids, your wife sense the energy from you. Yeah. And all of a sudden you walk in, you're walking towards the kitchen, and it's like and you see them and like their head's down or their energy's down because they're like, oh, dad's in a bad mood. You walk in with a smile and scream, hey, and they're running towards you. the whole night's awesome. It's
Yeah.
it's how you enter a room. And I always do this, and I've been doing this for years now. When I get home, before I walk in the house, in the car, I literally stop, reset, think of everything that happened bad that day. I let it in, let it out, take about 4 or 5 deep breaths, reset myself, and then I walk in with a smile. And I do that on purpose because it just changes everything. Something that takes
Man,
2 minutes changes everything.
dude, I'm big on mental cues, man. So like
Huge.
your phrase, how you enter a room, I'm gonna say that to myself all the time, man, because how you enter a room definitely matters. Like that energy that you said you bring into the house.
Yeah. So
Yes.
it's the vibration. It's how you, it doesn't matter even to work, even to any, it's just that energy, right?
Yes.
It changes everything, everything. So, a couple of questions I always ask everybody at the end, and one of them kind of worked with this superpower. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Wow, man. If I had a superpower, it would probably be, we just talked about it, man. It would probably be to stop time. Like time is the most important currency, as you said, time
Yeah.
and energy. And if I had the ability,
I'm going to ask you something. What does time mean to you? Describe it, and I'll explain what I mean by that.
well, I mean, at the end of the day, all we have is time, right? So, time to me, it is really the ability to cherish the moments that you have with the people that you love
Yeah.
and do the things that really make you feel like yourself, right? That's how I want to spend my time, doing what I want when I want with the people that I love,
Yeah. So you have an understanding and that's something I preach all the time is, I mean, your career, your money, everything that you achieve, the wealth you achieve, you understand the wealth equals freedom to do what you want, when you
that's
want,
right.
how you want. 100%. I love that. And why I ask that is because once you truly understand time, you start living with zero regrets.
Yes.
Because you understand that you don't have that time back. So if something happens, or your kid, I call it the yes factors. My kids ask me to do anything they want, whether it's time, not buying something, but if they say, Dad, let's go play catch, Dad, let's go for a bike ride, whatever I'm doing, John, drop, let's go. Because you don't have that time to go back. And especially as a parent, I don't know if you know the stat, and your kids are still young, but 90% of the face time we have with our children is before the age of 18.
Wow. 90%.
That studies show that. So think
That
about
is
that.
a statistic I got to remember.
But if you think about that, think of when kids get to college, that they start having their own life, their own independence. How often do they see your families? And when they're kids, you're with them 24/7, right? So you realize that. So it makes you understand that I have the time now. You got to make use of that time with your children as much as you possibly can, right?
Yeah, no, man, I'm going to definitely keep that in my back pocket, just because, I say I want my superpower to be able to stop time, but a lot of times great entrepreneurs and performers, they see time as a currency, right? So they maximize every second they have of life, be it with their kids.
Yeah.
They work with a healthy paranoia, to like maximize every moment they have. I hope if I ever had that superpower that I wouldn't neglect it if I could stop time whenever I wanted. I would just try to use it for the good so I can stretch out the moments I have with my wife and my son and my daughter and just by myself. Like I'm believe it or not, I really enjoy solitude. Like I like time to myself quite a bit. So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One last question. And this kind of goes with the whole eulogy thing. If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered or described by your loved ones?
Man,
I'm making you think today, huh?
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a servant, husband, father. Like in that order. In my mind, if I check off all those 3 boxes, I'm going to be a leader. A leader to my community, to my circle, and especially to myself. One reason why you and I connected, I could feel your authenticity, so like I'm big on, you could say what you want. There's so much fakeness on social media.
100%. I talk about that all the time, man.
So, when you find somebody genuine, regardless if they have 10 followers or 10 million. I hold that very, very like sacred to me.
Yeah.
So I would like to be remembered to be very genuine, that, what you see is what you get. Like that's who Jay is.
Yeah.
And if I do that and stay true to myself, I mean, everything's going to fall into place.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. How could our audience get a hold of you? Oh, you know what? One last thing. We didn't jump on, and something we were supposed to talk about. I just looked down at the one thing I wrote and we didn't talk about. Rare Breed Academy. Give me a quick little rundown. What's that all about, and how could people be involved in that?
Oh man, yes, thank you. Yeah, so the Rare Breed Academy is a holistic performance program. So it's with my partner Trent Shelton, who is a world-renowned coach and motivational speaker. And we really focus on mind, body, soul. And you talk about statistics, right? Like, 40% of the country in this COVID era is dealing with anxiety.
Yeah.
50 to 60% of the country is dealing with overweight, obesity. You got 10% of the country is dealing with depression, and probably 90% of the people don't get treated for it.
Yeah.
And then as entrepreneurs, you could say what you want. I believe there's a statistic that shows 44% deal with burnout.
Yeah.
Yet there's not a program that equally attacks making somebody perform at the highest level mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and professionally. So to me, like, that's when somebody's a rare breed. When you can really say to yourself that I'm operating at a high level, as a parent, as a professional, as an athlete, artist, whatever your calling is, that to me is a rare breed. So, myself, Trent Shelton, we created this program where you get everything from obviously workouts, you get mental exercises, just like you said, that we've been talking about quite a bit. And of course, the emotional resilience piece, a lot of people can, the heart and the mind are at battle a lot, right? It's like your mind says something, but your heart says another.
Yeah.
And making sure that they're both healthy and aligned with your hands and your feet, you doing the work, is what's really breeds success. So Rare Breed Academy is a virtual program where you get all these videos, in terms of workouts, mental exercises. We give people daily text messages and town halls. So that just the way we're on a Zoom right now, I coach, thousands of people all over the globe with Trent,
Cool.
Giving them Q&As. So that's what the Rare Breed Academy is. It's a virtual coaching program for mind, body, and soul.
I love that. And there's one thing I'm going to dive into that, and something I'm very passionate about is, as much as I'm all about family and then business, I still put my health above everything else, because I'm a strong believer, mentally, spiritually, physically. If you're not at your peak, you're not be able to serve no one else under. So your energy has to be at a certain peak. So I take my fitness, my diet, my nutrition, my supplements at a certain level, and meditation, everything. So I'm able to serve everybody. And you could, and then that's the reason I haven't, like, since March 18th of 2020, I've worked every single day. Mind you, I block my family time, but I haven't had one day off. I've worked even on Sunday mornings. And it's because I'm able to, I take care of myself enough that I'm able to still run through it and keep going. And that allows you, when opportunity comes to grow or develop or seeing, if you could have yourself at such a premium level and such a high level, mentally, spiritually, physically, you're able to serve and be able to still continue and grow everything else in your life. So yeah, I love what you said there.
That's all energy management. Like you 100%. Said, being able to mantle, being able to, really control your mental, physical, emotional energy. Like you're going to be able to just sustain excellence. And before I forget, go to rarebreedacademy.com, because we're actually about to launch the next cohort and obviously coach so many people virtually in May 10th. So now it's open registration. People can sign up at rarebreedacademy.com. You can either go to, Rare Breed Academy on Instagram, but go to the website and you'll really see what Trent and I are about. And like, you're a rare breed, Jeff. Man, I need to get you on there.
I appreciate it, brother. Yeah, 100%.
All right.
Very cool, man. I thank you so much for this, man. I'm going to put in all the show notes how to get a hold of that. And what I'll do is we'll talk after, but I'm going to get you to do a quick little promo for that. And I'll post on my storyline, all that before the podcast gets out to give you guys a little bit more promotion on my side as well for that.
Love it, dude. And man, I already told Trent I was going to be on here with you. But I got to arrange an intro. That 100%, way you 100%. Can have him as a guest, and looking forward to connect with your guy from Toronto.
Yeah. I'll do that. There's a couple other people I'm going to connect you with as well, because I love your energy. I think you're doing amazing things. So there's a lot of people I think you could really connect to as well.
Man, this was a lot of fun, bro.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, John, for being such an incredible guest and taking time out of his busy schedule to be a guest on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. If you guys enjoy this podcast as much as I have, please do like always, spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your family. Leave a review. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. We always love spending time reading the reviews. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.